Well, welcome. So happy to see you, Janine and Katie. And today I'm honored to be with these two lovely ladies and to discuss how we're going to go forward once we're out of the matrix. So
Awesome.
what I'd like to start with, because we all have an indigenous connection here, is to just show how we're going to be dealing with the patriots and the indigenous movement and how we can tie them in together.
Mm.
So Katie, if you'd like to start out.
Sure. Hello, everyone. It's such an honor to be here with Janine and Michelle, some of my most favorite people on earth. So what we're about 2 years ago, I guess, I've been having a reoccurring vision over and over of a gathering that was going to be larger than Standing Rock. And for those of you who don't know what Standing Rock was about, it was one of the largest Indigenous gatherings in history in the border of South and North Dakota area on the Standing Rock Reservation. It was a gathering that was in 2016 in a peaceful protest against the building of a pipeline going through their territory. And so they had tribes from all over the world gather, tribes and allies that came together to support that effort. So this vision that I've had is, I've had it right at the beginning of the pandemic, and it's just been reoccurring, but it's a merging of these two energies. You have the patriot movement, and then you have the indigenous movement as well, coming together as one down the backbone of Turtle Island. And Turtle Island is what the indigenous people refer to the North American continent. And so I know this, when the trucker movement happened, I was like, oh, I wonder if this is the vision I was having. But I kept getting, no, that's not it. And so this keeps coming to the forefront that we have to merge these two energies together. The indigenous tribes have been fighting for sovereignty since day one, since the Europeans migrated over to the Americas. And so it's nothing new for them. And then right around the time the pandemic began, that's when a lot of the patriots woke up to what was happening. And then that kind of activated their warrior energy within them to start standing up and being resistance to the mandates and the tyrannical orders and everything. So, there's two energies at play that all want the same thing. And we're kind of coming in parallel right now to the War of Independence, where you have this large patriot movement uprising happening, and also fighting for freedom and resisting the governments, the corporations, the dark factions, and bringing in all the shadows to the light and bringing it up, the underbelly of humanity up to the surface. And so the first time around, we had a situation where, we had a group come over to Turtle Island, and they saw how the Iroquois were living, and this group was like, I want what they have. They're living in freedom and love, and like they have so much freedom, these people, like, can we do what they're doing? And this is what sparked actually the rebellion against the king. It was inspiration from the Iroquois Confederation. And it was from the Iroquois Confederation that these patriot men and women modeled the Constitution. The first draft of the Constitution was from the Iroquois Confederation, which is still to this day not acknowledged publicly. And so coming back full circle to the same energies now, where, we're kind of somewhat breaking apart and we're in various different groups and segments of the collective. We're coming back to this, full circle of, okay, the first time around, we didn't work alongside our brethren and sister of the indigenous people and learn their ways through ego and pride. We kind of enforced our ways onto them, which, in a way we were fighting for freedom and liberty, but then through our pride, ignorance, and miseducation and programming, we were enslaving other groups at the same time. And so now we have the chance to come back and bring these two groups together, come back into right relationships with our Indigenous brothers and sisters who have, they have so much to offer, and we can't move forward in a sustainable manner with building a strong foundation that has no cracks without them. And so this conversation is going to be, directed towards this process and how we're going to unite and join forces, where we're going to become unstoppable.
Janine, I don't know if you can draw some cards on this, but what I'm thinking is, what I have seen is a number of our Indigenous brothers and sisters have no trust in our government nor in Trump. And from your point of view, that is the starting point where you started at one time too, was that you had no trust in Trump and came full circle. What are the cards? What does Spirit tell us about their reluctance, or no, I shouldn't say reluctance, but what about them moving forward? Are they going to be willing to accept the truths that Trump has put out, that Mr. T has put out?
I wonder, has Mr. T appealed to those communities at all in any of his conversations or in public?
Can you ask the cards that?
Yeah.
I do know that he has taken some of the federal lands with, okay, go ahead.
Interesting. So it looks like there's things going on under the surface of things, where there might even be some contact we don't even know about, because this card is making connections kind of on the back channels. So it looks like some reaching out has been done, possibly by the White Hats or people in the know about the alliance and the White Hats. So I feel like, but you're right, they're very disappointed, and it makes sense. Canadian Indigenous as well as American Indigenous, and really there aren't borders for these people, right? Because they were tribal and all across North America. Well, all over the world, there's Indigenous peoples, but so they don't necessarily always think about things in terms of like it's North American Indigenous, right? So I'm a Canadian, but that's just that corporation of Canada. I don't actually buy any of that actually, and the corporation of the US. So these people are originally, they don't really adhere to those boundary ideas, like so many people don't actually, but they're very disappointed. So it is going to be a little bit hard, but I feel like because there's already been reaching out, there could be a big change in that coming. I feel like some of their leaders have already been approached. And there could be a big change. And as information comes out more publicly about what the Alliance and the White Hats have been up to, that will really help bring these people on board. Because it just makes sense they're not going to trust. And in Canada, we have an interesting situation with Indigenous people. Not all of them, but in some areas, what I noticed in the pandemic, when things got all shut down and everything, they were more fearful actually. So you have this mixed thing, because a lot of them were taken out in the situation with smallpox and diseases that were brought over by contact with, European contact. So now yes, they don't trust the government, but they don't trust, they overly trust the medical system. Okay, what I found, a lot of groups I was talking to overly trust, and they shut down their communities tight, so fearful. And they're very reliant on the medical system, it seems, some of the communities. And a lot of them are in Canada here anyway. I can only speak for that. And some of the places I was in contact with, they are very dependent on government money.
Mm-hmm.
So they have this weird a double enslavement in a way, because they have a lot of illnesses that come from the bad eating that was brought by the Europeans that didn't suit their body type. So, only 300 years ago, they were eating buffalo, okay, or even 200, and then that got wiped out. And you better believe by the dark ones. Mm-hmm. So the dark hats. so I'm going to use careful language here, but they were wiped out. That's why they wiped the buffalo out. It was the healthiest, best way to eat, really, and stay warm here in Canada in particular. Okay, so now they're really confused, and I found that a lot of them masked more even in those communities, and were more fearful of actually because they some idea of they're going to be taken out again by a disease came up in their DNA or something. So it overrode in some cases their disdain for the government, and they got more fearful and locked down and bought into the agendas. That's what I noticed. So that was a bit sad, actually.
And
I
it
was
wasn't just-
disappointed, actually.
Yeah, and it wasn't just in Canada. I was in South Dakota in April of this year, and I went to use the restroom on one of the reservations, and I got chased into the place. You have to put a mask on. You have to put a mask on.
Yeah.
I mean, they were that fearful. And around the rest of the country, nobody was wearing them, but on that reservation, it was required. So yes, they are very fearful, and they are abiding by the medicinal pharmaceutical group that are promoting that type of science, which really isn't science, because science, you have theories and you question it, but they just accept it.
Mm-hmm.
So that
And that's
is,
all. It's
pardon?
all connected to trauma-based mind control. So
Yep.
you have these are the groups that have been the most heavily traumatized in the last few years, and so it's hooking into the mind control aspect, and that's why there's so much of a fearful reaction to this. And I
Mhm.
always felt intuitively, like I can't speak in terms of proof or anything, but intuitively that whole smallpox story was always never resonated with me. And I think it was more of a systematic poisoning of the people. And they used these viruses or diseases, which is just an imbalance in the body of some sort. So it could come from a poisoning, a threat of an exterior thing outside of yourself that you have no control over, coming in and basically attacking your people. So, this is all part of that, a Raine group psychological programming, and what they did to these people is just like they did it to all of us, obviously. Like they did it like to even like we're all indigenous, we all come from from this planet, and but some of us migrated out of our ancestral indigenous lands, and but the same with the Celtic people, they did the exact same protocol with them to disconnect them from their land, and them as a group were heavily traumatized. They had nowhere else to go, is either face death or leave and go to other places. And so they came over to the Americas thinking they could, escape their situation, completely traumatized, completely distraught and desperate. And when people are under these circumstances, they don't make wise choices. So, I think overall, like looking at the grander perspective of things, there are gems in these communities who are awake. I know some of them personally. So it's like maybe starting with these individuals first and joining forces, and then from there gaining trust and coming slowly. It's obviously going to be a process of coming back into right relation, but they have information that the Patriot movement needs, and the Patriot movement has information that they need. So it's like, the more we come together and slowly start, working away at this process, the faster things are going to get moving off the ground. And I have a feeling the upper echelons, the alliance, they're waiting for we the people to start this process. Like this is a timestamp in order for them to release more information. Like we have to do the work to come together and unify with each other.
And that's what I keep getting, is that we, the people, have to make a stand. We have the rights. We have to take the power back and expose our power within and use our power within. Is that what the cards are saying, Janine? Can you?
Let's have a look.
And it's interesting because even the saying "we the people," that was what the Iroquois Confederation utilized. That is from the tribes as well.
And it is, and it's planetary. It's not just in the Americas. We've got to look at this as a global thing and a planetary thing. It's all the people.
I get they're actually connected to some of the most ancient bloodlines, and they're we know that there's many bloodlines that make up the human race, and all of them are from different star systems, apparently, right? So it's so different than we thought it was. Okay, but it looks like they're some of the most richest bloodlines, which is why they were sought after from the dark cult and the deep state. I mean, we know that they had hunting parties up here in the north. The more north you go, the worse it got. And they like, well, we can't really talk about it here, but you guys know what I'm talking about, the party substance. Well, they like the skin tones that are going on in indigenous peoples in North America. And they're looking for certain blood types. Okay, so it looks like they're rich in that blood type that is sought after. So the DNA of these people is literally on a level that feels like they need to be the leaders. And I got to be really honest, for years and years, when I studied astrology, I always got that in these times, and I didn't know, I wasn't as red-pilled as nearly as I am now, but I always knew that the new leaders that were coming in this time, that there was going to be, what I did see astrologically when I was studying was right around 2020, it would start, a big power shift would start. And basically over the next 5 or 6 years, the meek shall inherit the earth. I'll say it like that. So the people that have been the underdogs and taken advantage of, they were going to rise up, and the elites were going to be wiped out. And that has a lot to do with everything that's going on, and it includes astrology. Astrology tells us that's happening. And if you look at the alignments, they're working with us, that this is a destined time. And I feel like the destined people to take the lead, some of them are going to be indigenous North Americans and their spiritual knowledge. And a lot of them have forgotten it. So I'm not just saying, just because you're born indigenous in a reserve, you could be some of the most self-loathing. Like I've lived in reserve. I actually lived on a reserve when I was little. We weren't part of that reserve, but my dad was a forest ranger. I know exactly what it looks like. It was awful. I'm going to tell you, it was in northern Alberta, and it was like worse than some of the most third world countries in the world that you are scared to go to. Okay, it was worse than that. I've seen pictures of what that looks like. This was worse. Okay, because you have to add the weather factor here. So they were living in put together shacks that were put together. Some of them had cardboard over the holes. Okay, it was just disastrous, and the water would freeze up. It was terrible. Diseases that went around, everybody would get them. We had to be part of that too, and so that was for me to understand what this looks like. So we moved off of that, but I saw from the outside looking in what it can look like, and then I had that little glimpse inside for a few years, and then I lived in the Haida Gwaii, and no, they never agreed to the terms that the government put forward for most of Canada. So the Haida Gwaii is a different group of Indigenous people. They're very prideful still, thank goodness, but there's still a lot of beaten down energy there. So we need to work on the self-love, and they're going to need to quickly step into self-loving and come out of some of these unfortunate traumatic energies. They got life, 3 or 4 different generations of where they feel like they're the underdogs, and that's going to take some work, but that needs to happen first before they can step into, literally, they're probably going to be the leaders. So I think we got to work on that. So it's saying, yes, we're absolutely, these people are even like custodians of the earth in a way, but they have to remember it. They have to come back to full circle and remember it and remember who they are. But I feel like there's going to be help from the galactic helpers, other dimensionals, helping them. So maybe that solar flare or flash people talk about could help these people overcome their trauma, like a lot of us need to overcome past lives and past traumas. That might really help them come up to speed. I almost feel like it'll be done quicker through something that gives them a boost and brings them up, because that could take lifetimes if you're doing it the way the rest of us kind of had to work on, right? So that would take too long. I feel like there's going to be something that quickens that process and gets these people up to speed to recognize their incredible magic that they bring and how important they're going to be in this.
Well, that's what's really important, is because the indigenous people are the closest to spirit. They always were with spirit until they were knocked down by the matrix and put into that. And like you were saying earlier, Janine, about the buffalo, they revered the buffalo. The buffalo provided them all of their needs, their warmth, their clothing, their shelter, their food. And no one in the indigenous community ever went without if somebody had something. If there was something to be shared, they shared it amongst them all. And this is what I think going forward, that as we leave, as people realize that they have left the matrix, that we're going to have to instill on this communal living where grandparents are nearby, aunts, uncles, and everybody shares. I know when I grew up, which is different than now, my grandparents lived a block away. My uncles lived on the same block that we did. We were all together and shared everything. And that's been taken away by the indoctrination through the school systems and through this government that is now defunct. I mean, we're not in that construct anymore, so we have to move forward. And I think we really need to have the indigenous brothers and sisters help us lead the way spiritually.
Yep.
Definitely. I actually have a question tying into the first one about the Alliance actively working with some of the community members. I actually had a friend who's full-blooded Plainsman Lakota tell me a story recently that his elder, who is a medicine man, he was invited down to Vegas with a group, and it was he thought it was something to do with indigenous veteran passing away, like holding ceremony for an indigenous veteran. But when he got down there, this group who was in civilian clothes took him to this canyon. And I have a feeling it's a place called Rainbow Canyon, which is a place where it's known to be a PowerPoint of telepathy. So you can communicate to 13 different tribes at this one sacred location outside of Las Vegas. And the group, he didn't know exactly who they were, but he was picking up a military energy with them. And they were asking him to basically speak to, I don't know if it was a group or a starship or something. They gave him specific directions to speak to this, this being or thing outside of himself, and let us know what clairvoyant messages and communications you receive. So they were in a way testing him, and he still doesn't know what it was really for. But I have a feeling that this was like, when my friend told me this, I was getting a hit that it was connected to Space Force and the Alliance. So it would be awesome to do some cards on that and see what comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like the dark ones have been withholding any kind of, it's like they know something about indigenous people. So it's not quite answering the question yet, but sometimes that's how cards work. It feels like the dark ones withheld energy and tried to suppress and take out as many indigenous North Americans as possible, because they knew the truth and they didn't want the truth getting out about something spiritually. And that could even be about our indigenous people knowing about off-worlders. There was lots of, actually, in the family group or the group of people that I'm attached to through my father. So my father's father, the Kootenays. Okay, there's a range of mountains, and there's caves there in the Kootenays, and it's not that far from where I live right now. It's about 3 hours. You can drive there in a day. And there's drawings, ancient drawings that are very much not talked about. Nobody talks about them. And they literally are of what appears to be, could be space aliens and spaceships and things like that. So there's so much they know and knew about in their ancestry, these peoples, North American indigenous peoples. And I have a feeling that the Khazarian mafia were obviously active. I guess I better not say that anymore. Were obviously active in the time, that first European contact was being made, and they made sure, because they were part of the government then. Of course, they've been part of the government all along. They probably invented the word government, you know what I mean? And they made sure that those people were, as many of them as they could, silenced in every way they could, because they knew. So they knew the truth. So I feel like they've been in contact and know the truth. So some of their some people that work spiritually who are in those communities to reconnect back to their old ways, because not all of them do, right? There's a lot of healing to be done. Okay, so I've met incredibly spiritually connected Indigenous people and some of the least spiritually connected Indigenous people. It goes all the range. So they have to remember, you have to do the spiritual work. It doesn't matter. Like, you can be from anywhere, you still got to do the spiritual work, right? But they do, if they do the work, they can tap into it, and they would have the ancient knowledge of, and it's in the acoustic the records. What is that called? The something records.
Acacia.
Yeah, Akashic records. It's in the, I said acoustic. It's in the records. It's in their DNA records. So if they do the spiritual work, like they were always encouraged to do individually, this is another thing I love about Indigenous North American communities, the way they understood spirituality. We've all got to learn that. Okay, as soon as I studied with an Indigenous medicine man for a while, I figured out that it's not about doing things in a group. It's individually connecting to your soul energy, and your inner self knows how to do it. And all he did was give me permission to go looking for it in nature and looking for it inside myself. And that's what everybody has to learn. It's not some outside entity. That's unfortunate. That was all misleading by the, dark ones. They misled us with organized religion. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, no, the religions are all bad from the baddies, yes. And they did it for division and control. That was the whole purpose.
Yeah.
And, you think of the peoples before all the conquerors came around, there were no borders, and there should be no borders. And we're going to get back to that, where there are no borders in the future. Like I said, all what we really need to do is just to get everybody together to leave this matrix and to stand up and take that power back within ourselves. Now, do you see that we have a worldwide continuum with all the Indigenous people maybe gathering together and standing up with, I guess you'd call them patriots, but I don't know what the other countries call them. Individuals that are seeking their own power.
Yeah.
We the
sovereign
people.
beings.
We the people.
We the people. Yeah. Okay, so it looks like right now there's some big hurdles in the way. Okay, and of course these bad guys, they don't want that to happen. So that's something they've been trying to prevent, I think, since the beginning of time. But anyway, because once you get, they wanted to keep everybody separated. They wanted to keep the Indigenous groups angry at the newcomers. They wanted to keep, instead of the newcomers learning from these people. So some of them did, actually. A lot of the Europeans that came here, actually, the French Canadians were quite famous for it. They got very involved with the communities and married into the Indigenous communities. And they have a little bit of there's some real bad ones in those groups too. But for the most part, they created a whole Métis situation here, certainly in Canada. And I'm sure it goes up into the States as well, or down into the States, I should say. I don't know how it really works, but anyway, they created this Métis situation where they had the French and the Indigenous, and they created a whole nother group. It was fascinating. And of course, my family's obviously Métis. My dad's a Métis. But anyway, I think that there's a lot of hurdles to overcome, but I get this feeling that there's going to be a leader come forward, and they're going to be at least part from one of these Indigenous groups. And it looks like a female, and or a feminine essence anyway. And they're going to be very instrumental in sort of bringing that together. But, and it will happen even in our lifetimes, it looks like. Everybody on this screen's lifetime, but we don't know how long we're going to end up living now that we get rid of this bunch. So I don't know what that means. Okay. And some of the leaders coming out of those groups are going to be feminine. So that's really interesting. There's going to be some really the divine feminines coming back. And that is a story amongst North American Indigenous peoples. They talk about the white buffalo coming, which is the beginning of the divine feminine stepping back into her role. Do you know what I mean? So the divine feminine is absolutely something that we're all going to be experiencing. I think all the groups in the world are starting to realize that the feminine essence has been incredibly repressed with this dark cult. They don't like it at all. They swap out people at birth, so they don't have actual literal females in power positions. They have what was boys into those positions. Anyway, from birth, they swap them and all that kind of stuff that they do. And everything's to basically take away the power of the divine feminine. If you look at their culture, if we can call it that, and their cult-like ideas about things, that's what they do. And they repress it in every way and turn it ugly in every way and only put it in a category that's very demeaning. So as far as I'm concerned, yes, it's going to happen, but it's going to take this one leader. It looks like a woman, and I feel like they're going to bring it together. And they're going to probably have to, they might have already started doing it on the back, in the back channels. I don't know.
Now, has Mr. T been involved with the communication with any of these Indigenous leaders that might step forth? And is there a plan? Let's put it that way. Is there a plan to integrate them into the new future that we're going to have of
That's
community?
a great question. Yeah. Wow. You're not going to believe this. The same two cards. So I'd say it was already, they already at least chose the person. They might, I don't know if they told them about it yet, but they chose the person. And we've got this Tower card. So, wow. Mr. T knows who it is. Okay. And I think some things have to go down first because this was in the past. So this has to happen first. Okay. So I feel like that might be the big revelation. Oh, no, I pulled this card to describe that. Okay, so the financial system has to crash first, and some things have to come to light about a gold-backed system. So something around the crashing of a system that brings up another more positive system. And also the some of the truths about the children have to come out. Shocking truths.
That was my next question, is because the Indigenous peoples, actually peoples of all color, have really suffered the greatest loss amongst the little ones.
Yep.
And amongst the harvesting and the abuse of them. Is that the one element that can really help to unite we the people with the Indigenous groups, to, if we focus on that one topic, to bring us together? And I'm sorry, Katie, you're next.
That and one other thing. That and the situation around time travel, other dimensional galactic helper. So what's out there that isn't necessarily, we've been told that all of that's just conspiracy theories. But I think everything to do with the extraterrestrial sort of knowledge also has to come out. So it's two things, and that's one of them. But there's also admitting to what's really going on, with the Space Force and what they've been covering up about what's out there in the universe, let's just say.
So we need to put our focus on those two aspects to help unite and bring everyone together.
Mhm.
Well, since I've kind of monopolized all of the time, Katie?
No, you're asking really important questions. That was amazing. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I want to mention that, what can we do as individuals to help this process, and, in our communities, and from a grassroots perspective. From my own experience, when I moved out west, to British Columbia, I had the opportunity. I was volunteering at the carving festival, which featured a lot of the traditional Indigenous carvers in the community, and there I had the opportunity to meet a lot of the families in my community, and they opened their doors to me. I was so blessed and grateful that they opened their doors, and I made really good friends amongst the community, and I was invited to family dinners, and I got to sit amongst family members, and I really got to witness basically how I was as a child, very intuitive, and using my 9 senses. This was the first time in my life where I actually saw it outside of myself, that was normal. Around the dinner table, they'll be talking about spirit and, their dreams, and all, from a multidimensional perspective. And that was a huge activation for me. And it reconnected me more to my soul essence. And so I recommend everyone, like, that was the starting point. I was like, that was like going out the gates, like, okay, these are my people, basically. I need to spend more time with them, because it's bringing me closer to myself. And so I recommend everyone, really find ways to be of assistance and be of service, and really reach out to your Indigenous brothers and sisters and get to know them one-on-one, because it's the thing is, on a grander scale, I've done a lot of past life regression work in earlier years, but a common theme is that we've reincarnated as multiple skin colors. Like, we've been we've been African, we've been Indigenous, we've been European, so I personally believe that a lot of us who chose to reincarnate on this land, there are missing soul fragments of us trapped in the land, like from trauma. So we may have been part of the residential school system in a past life, or we may have been killed by the colonists, or, that's how kind of karma works. Like, you reincarnate. If you were racist in one life towards a certain race, you'd reincarnate as that race in the next life, type thing, to balance out the energies. So, there's in this process, we're coming back to ourselves when we unify. And since I've been on this journey, I've been invited to many amazing things, including tribal journeys, where they take the traditional canoes. We left from Long Beach to Fino and went all the way down to Puyallup, up Tacoma, Washington. So we were on the water for like 2 weeks straight doing ceremony, and it was amazing. And anyone who hasn't had an opportunity to sit in ceremony, it's like something you do need to do, because that's where we come back to our power and our spirit, and reconnect to these other senses that we've been programmed to basically, they don't exist, or, that's the work of the devil or whatever. And so after I spent all this time, and that was kind of my coming back to myself, and a huge part of my spiritual path. And to this day, I have many Indigenous friends in various different communities that I stay in communication with. I notice information will just come in, and it must be from past lives or something, but I'll get information of the land, of water codes, and how things operate in terms of the interconnectiveness of life forms and things like that, and stuff I'll be sharing on a public space. And I'll have Indigenous audience members reach out to me and compliment and say, I've never heard of these stories until, this is like almost missing information that you're bringing through. And so it must be in my light body somewhere from previous lifetimes as perhaps an Indigenous person on this land. So, I'm not the only one. Many of us have information in our field that we have yet to unlock or access, as like, some people call it a download. I call it a memory. But the more and more we work with, the people of the land, the more this information is going to come in, because memory, that the thing is, a lot of these communities, a lot of my Indigenous friends are worried about the information being lost, like with the elders passing away. But the thing is, information is never, ever, information and memory is an energetic imprint, and that's never destroyed. You can always access that through the Akashic, through, it could be a white skinned person who was an Indigenous elder of a certain tribe in a past life that you could just be getting that information from. So it's like, the more we come together, the more we activate each other and remember who we are, as are many other past lifetimes, and it's with that comes power, and we can actually actively start with boots on the ground, restoring the ecosystems, enhancing them again, and being the stewards we came here to be, because we're all like, as one human race, we are here to be stewards of this planet.
Yeah. Can I just say something that came to my mind that I think we need to say? So I studied with lots of different Indigenous who called themselves medicine people over in my lifetime. And what I noticed was, and what it taught me was, that we are individually our own guide spiritually. So you can get a certain amount of information. They're like a teacher to a certain degree, but they're not to be put on pedestals. And if you get one, so putting a whole culture and going to seek out a medicine person who happens to be Indigenous doesn't necessarily mean they're not above you. Nobody's above you. They don't know more than you. But what they could be good for is to teach you the way to seek individually, which their culture was quite known for. Like, you had to go out in wilderness and literally find your own spirit totems and understanding. So they would encourage you to do that. That's a good one, doing that. But as soon as they become like, now they're becoming preacher-like, and like ran into a few situations where they were absolutely more behaving like preachers. Okay. And then now assuming the role of the patriarchal teacher, stepping over boundaries and doing exactly what priests do. Okay, I met a whole bunch of those, by the way. And what it taught me was always come back to my intuitive knowing, get what you can from whatever teacher. And as soon as it doesn't feel right, drop it. Nobody's your guru. Even if they're an Indigenous person and calling themselves a medicine man, doesn't mean they're more spiritual than you are. Okay, it's all about individually finding. So their culture knew how to do that. So if you can teach yourself how to do that, that's great, but don't put people on pedestals or give them more power than they earn. You're the power within yourself. And that's what their culture can teach you that. And I've been Indigenous many lifetimes, and I'm part Indigenous this lifetime. And I feel like I just needed to say that we've been all things, like you said, Katie. I love that you said that. I feel my Black lifetimes, I feel like the only lifetimes I don't really feel strongly are Asian. I don't feel like I've been that. Maybe I'll be that in a future life, because I'd like to learn about that energy more directly, right? And I'm meeting wonderful people from those communities, and they can help me get more comfortable with that energy. So I don't feel like I might have been that, but I've been a lot of different colors, let's just say. And that just makes us a more evolved being if we can remember some of those things. I love what you said there, Katie.
I love what both of you have said, and that's pretty much it, because we've all been everything. There isn't anything that we haven't experienced. And in order to know the light, you have to know a little bit of the dark. In order to know the good, you have to know a little bit of the bad. And I'm sure we've all been tortured at one time, and we've all probably been the torturer. But hopefully we've learned from that, and we go to the light and the love now and focus on that.
Yeah.
And what you said, Janine, is yes, we're all one of the many and many of the one. There's nobody that's above us. There's nobody below us. That's what we have to go forward with. We're getting rid of this matrix where there was subordination, oppression, division. We don't need that anymore.
Yep.
And thank goodness those constructs are done. The White Hats, the Alliance, they've been working diligently behind the scenes. But now the message I keep getting is that we together we, the people, need to stand up and claim our sovereignty, look at the power within and go forward together that way. And I think we need to bring in all peoples, and the ones that have been the most oppressed have been the indigenous.
Mhm.
And it's because, like you said, of their DNA and bloodline. Is there anything you want to draw cards with, Janine, for us to go forward with as a message?
Yeah, let's maybe to any peoples connecting with or actually involved with or part of Indigenous communities, maybe let's ask the universe for a message for those people, because they're going to have to overcome a lot of things to step out of. Like I said, the communities I touched base with during the last 3 years. Okay, we're so locked down and fearful. So how can they help themselves? So if you're sitting in a community like that, any community like that, because there's a lot of them, okay, what can you do to help move energetically and help your community move energetically? Because we're all of us, each individually, have things we can do, but some of them are very subtle, some of them are just energy. You know what I mean? But how can we help those kind of communities shift out of that? Let's have a look.
That's a great question.
Okay. If you're among them and or sending energy of your most highest and inviting the wise ones and the galactic helpers to really come to these people and help them. Okay, the strength of that galactic helper energy. This is our future self. Galactic helpers, I call this card. So it's like some people call it, extraterrestrial, but I would say a lot of that energy is actually our future selves. It's what we evolve into, maybe. And they're here because time doesn't work the way we believe it does. And they're here because they know what's going on Earth right now, and they're helping us. Okay, so I feel like we need to draw the strength of those energies. So if you're within a community that feels really locked down and really fearful, call in the energy of and accept the help of those energies. And if you're just even outside looking in a community like that, do the same thing. Call in the help and energy of those future selves of ours, because I don't think they help until they're invited. So invite in the help to the highest good of all humanity. Obviously, keep that in mind. You're calling in helpers to the highest good of all humanity, so spiritual help, basically, to help shift those energies. You don't physically have to go out and try to recruit people. Probably that'll get you alienated, but call in spiritual help and assume that it'll be shifted.
That's beautiful. Yes. Is there any last thing that anyone would like to say, Katie?
Nothing comes to mind. I'm just grateful to be here, and I love this conversation.
That's been great. Janine, anything else that you would like to share with us?
Just like I was so thankful to meet you two lovelies and how much fun we had, just on a personal note, and how I feel like now you're part of my family. So going forward, I feel like us doing that truther tour together, I feel like now we have connections to people basically all over the globe. Right. That we actually physically hugged, you know what I mean, and spent time with. And so it's like we're creating this really strong network. And I feel like that is going to be the absolute icing on the cake to getting these dark ones off the earth plane. They can't mess with us. We literally created a community that's worldwide. And all the viewers are part of that, and all of us truthers. And when we come together physically, occasionally here, and hopefully more than occasionally in the coming, days, years, months, years, I feel like we'll be stronger than ever. So I'm so excited, and it was so wonderful to meet you two ladies.
Oh, I feel the same thing. And I have to thank Louis Herms with his truth tour, because he's brought the family together.
Yep.
And we found our family. And
Mhm.
It's been such a privilege being with you two ladies and sharing time and sharing bread.
Yep.
And I look forward to it in the future. Katie, you're going to post this on your YouTube?
Yep, I'll post this up. And I also wanted to ask one more question that just came to mind, actually, to do with so the water protector movement. It's a group of a lot of Indigenous youth, actually, and they've been so on a higher level. A lot of these Indigenous groups, they are contracted with Creator to protect the land at all costs. Like, it's in their genetics to do this, in their blood. So there is this whole revival movement around this water protector warrior movement to safeguard certain places. And they're forming groups right now where they're going to start bringing in the horses as well. And so the horses will be on call to come to certain areas around the US that need safeguarding. And I'd like to ask the cards, would it be beneficial if the Patriots start showing up to these peaceful standoffs with the water protectors?
So it looks like on some level, undercurrent, so there's undercurrent things going on. They could already be making those connections. Okay, but I also got a warning with these 2 5s that beware of, so those communities have to be aware of infiltrators from the dark hats that'll pose as, because if you think about it, all that protection of land has been usurped, some of that, and called the green plan and stuff. So you have to be really careful of those far left green plan people that pose as water protectors, and because they're going to start bringing in the global warming ideas and ideas that actually are the exact opposite of what's actually happening on the earth, and also are actually backed by that dark cult that we talk about in the deep state. It's that whole agenda is false and backed by evil intentions, has nothing to do with saving the earth, but they come across like protectors of the earth. They under the guise of that, and they even, some of them believe they are, but they're actually put in place by this group. So you have to be really careful. So just be careful and use your instincts who to toss out of the group, and who, we're gonna have to be mindful going forward who we give our energies to, let's just say.
Okay, and this is a really this just came to mind. Is there artificial intelligence involved with that?
So what do you get more specific about that question?
So some of these individuals who could be, whether allies or Indigenous, who are being guided to do certain things and to create these movements, and is there artificial intelligence at play, off planet Archon control at play, infiltrating through the psyche of certain individuals with these groups?
Well, I think that was the case for a while, but they've largely been rooted out, actually. So that looks good. So it looks like there's been a lot of work to get those ones out of the situation. Okay. And the best thing to do to ensure that what information you're channeling isn't from a dark source, or who you're connecting with is just come into yourself on it. So she's like the god, the earth goddess, right? Go somewhere in nature and feel how it feels, and what that, I always look for my signs in nature. Okay. And I go out in nature and I ask the universe to send me a sign. So Mother Earth herself to send me a sign. And I always get a sign, and I usually put it out there. If it's positive, I'll see this or something like that. Or if it's negative, I'll see this. So I'll often put out there what I'm hoping to see. So it's a raven if it's something positive. It's something else, an animal, that, you know, that's a little trickier if it's like a fox, or not to say those animals are bad, but it will just alert me to what I'm dealing with and what kind of energy I'm dealing with. Right. So I put my own vision of these animals out there. And so you have to use your own ideas about how to do that, but go in nature and feel energetically what's true and what isn't, and you'll know. So touching base that way is your best way to understand what you're dealing with. But it looks like a lot of them have been taken out of the scenario. So a lot of work's been done. And I believe that too, because my cards always confirm that there's been a lot of work done on our behalf to take out these bad entities, but there's still a few left. And they're going to try to infiltrate, especially things like water protectors and stuff. And I've even seen in these groups, so I've been to a lot of rallies to save different areas and over my lifetime. And I've seen often where they get infiltrated by total just liberal idealism that's just the green plan sort of in a disguised way. You can hear it at how stupid the stuff they're saying is. You excuse the term, but you can see it. Like it goes over in that area, and it's like, okay, that's not about the spiritual energy of protecting water anymore. Now you're getting all agenda on us. Yeah, you can hear it.
Mm-hmm. So there's a group in Georgia right now safeguarding a portion of old forests that they have plans. Supposedly they have plans to clear cut and put in a militant police hub as part of the smart city plan. And so this has created a lot of distraught in a lot of the indigenous communities, because this is on sacred land. And I wonder, is that, who's behind that? And you know, is that cabal or white hats, or
who's behind which part of it? The smart city?
Yeah, the threat, the basically the creation of a police hub, clear cutting this forest to create a police hub.
That's going to get stepped away from. So it was the dark ones, but there's already been an agreement on the back channel. And the white hat, good army or military, I call it good military, has already contacted or infiltrated there. And they've basically put those guys on notice. So going forward won't happen. This looks like it happened. They'll step away from that supposed smart city, but you better believe it was the mafia type, you know what I mean? That K group, we'll just call, absolutely. But I feel like that the leadership of that's been dismantled to a large degree. So it feels like there's already been if they're still talking about it, I feel like it's just to wake up people to what these guys' agenda was.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Well, thank you both very much. Does anybody have anything else they wanted to share? If not, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much. I feel so privileged to share the stage with you, and have a marvelous day.
Thank you. You too, ladies.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.